I'm going to be a bit different just because you've been looking at that stage for the last 2 days, so I thought I'd stand over here so you can tilt your head slightly in a different direction. But it's also because I'm going to put some slides up here where I want to be able to really get close to them and have a look at them. So we started yesterday morning with a lot of talks on genetics, and we've been off and started to talk about some other really interesting and useful topics. To finish off the conference, we're kind of going to go back to where we began and really go through back on the genetics topic. And there's a few things I want to take you through. First of all, I want to go right back to basics and say, well, what actually, and we'll focus a bit more in this session on Breedplan rather than genetic improvement in general. But I really want to go back and say, well, what is the role of Breedplan to you within your seed stock enterprise in actually making genetic improvement? We then had a lot of discussion yesterday about whether the Hereford breed made genetic improvement or not. I want to put up some recent information which we've got, which really delves into answering that question, so we can look at, since 1990, what actual genetic changes have occurred within the Hereford breed, and moving forward to finish up, review and say, well, what opportunities exist to both Breedplan and the Hereford breed beyond 2013 in improving your genetics and utilisation of the Breedplan technology. So that's really where I'm heading. Look, I'm happy to take questions as we go along. If there's anything which needs clarification or when we say look at some of these slides, then please pull me up and we'll answer your question then and there. So the first thing I want to go back and review is really what is genetic improvement. We talked a lot about it. It might seem really basic, and hopefully to most of you, you're running a seed stock enterprise where genetics are your business, so hopefully you'll have a very good understanding of what genetic improvement is. But just to put up what I guess where I see genetic improvement to me is a simple tool that's available to you or to beef producers in general, that's available to us to allow us to improve the phenotype, performance or profitability of the animals within our enterprise. So it's one of the tools which we have available to us in association with our management and improved pastures and improved animal health and those type of things, that we can improve the actual performance and profitability of our animals. If we try and define genetic improvement and actually give it a definition, and we go to the Genetics 101 textbook, how we would define genetic improvement is effectively when the genetic value of the offspring is greater than the genetic value of the parents from which we were available for selection and which we bred those offspring. So we're looking at just improving the genetics of our animals and therefore improving the performance of those animals. There's nothing too revolutionary in that statement. Obviously the importance of genetic improvement though is while a lot of the gains are per generation or per year can be quite small and hard to see, over time genetic improvement, all the improvements that we make, they're permanent, so any improvements we make this year stay within our operations for future years and we build on those. So any improvement we make is actually cumulative, and so if we start to look at genetic improvement, say since 1990, the small gains which we've made each year can add up to quite a significant difference in the performance and profitability of those animals. So that's how I define genetic improvement. Then I want to go in and start to answer this question then, well, what actually is Breedplan? And what does it do for you as a seed stock producer in your objective of making genetic improvement? So there's nothing again too new in this, but I think it's important just to go back and look at what the role of Breedplan is. So obviously Breedplan is just simply the genetic evaluation software which we have available to us as the Hereford breed. It's adopted by Herefords Australia as their genetic evaluation. And all it does is use BLUP technology, best linear unbiased prediction technology, to go through, take a range of pedigree and performance information to calculate estimated breeding values for a range of economically important traits. And there's nothing different to what the Hereford breed does to other breeds do, beef breeds in Australia, but also other species, other countries around the world, all utilise exactly the same technology within their breeding programs to go through and aid them in making their selection decisions. So there's nothing we're doing that's unique, but obviously there's a whole range of different ways that we use it. One of the benefits of Breedplan at the moment is the actual Breedplan technology is complemented by a range of different add-on tools, which we've had a lot of talk about over the last couple of days, both selection indexes, things like MateCell, which I'll talk about in a little while, some of the internet-based solutions and technologies, and obviously DNA-based technologies moving forward. So all we have is a Breedplan, is simply a genetic evaluation software. The key thing, I guess, is what is the role of Breedplan in actually making our genetic improvement? And if I look at that, the important point I really want to stress here is tools such as Breedplan do not make any genetic improvement at all. ultimately it's the use of those tools by yourselves, by seed stock producers, which results in how much genetic improvement is made. And so to make genetic improvement, we need more than just the tool available to us. Obviously within your programs, you need a strict breeding objective and direction to breed towards. All our genetic improvement, we can only make small gains generally each year. So if we don't have a long-term strategy and direction in which we're breeding, then we tend to just spin our wheels and go around in circles. So we need to facilitate genetic improvement going forward. Obviously the first thing you need within your breeding program is a direction and a breeding objective. Then ultimately, utilisation of tools such as Breedplan and the animals that you choose to put into your breeding program determine whether you make any genetic improvement or any progress towards that breeding objective. So really the key role I think now for you as seed stock producers is to go through and to make sure that you're using the tools that are available to you to the best of their ability to ensure that you're making the most genetic improvement that you can and ultimately delivering the genetics to the commercial industry that are more and more profitable each year. And we had a lot of talk about yesterday from people like Rob Banks and David Johnson about our declining terms of trade and how at the moment our genetic improvement that we're making is not keeping track or keeping up with the amount that we're losing each year in terms of trade. I think one of the other things, and I've just got that there, it's not a key point out of this, but one of the key roles that I see for breed societies and breed organisations like Herefords Australia is actually to facilitate your ability to use these tools and the availability of these tools to ensure that you are making genetic improvement and therefore maintaining the commercial viability of your breed. So that's where I see Breedplan. The key thing I want to come back to about that is Breedplan itself doesn't make any genetic improvement, but ultimately it's a tool there that you can use to make genetic improvement within your program. So we'll come back to this question and really start to focus in on, I see we had a lot of discussion yesterday, but is the Hereford breed making genetic improvement at the moment? And we had discussion yesterday and people saying that we weren't making as much progress as we should. So I thought it was worthy to actually go through and try and put some facts behind that and really delve into exactly what's happened within the Hereford breed, both an overall level and an individual trait level since 1990. So the first thing, I guess, one of the benefits that we have from Breedplan, our selection indexes, is the selection indexes which have all been developed by the Breed Society, and there was quite a few people in this room that were involved in the development of the current selection indexes, is they allow us to get a good assessment of what's happened to the overall profitability of Hereford genetics for particular production systems. So we have the four different indexes, the one for the supermarket index, the grass-fed steer, the grain-fed steer, and also the EU index at the moment. So we've got a good way of going through and assessing, well, for those particular production system and markets, are Hereford genetics today more profitable than what they were in 1990 for use in those programs? And these graphs here, and I'm going to have a few graphs coming up, so I'll explain these ones in a bit of detail. So basically what we've got here is, say, for each of the four indexes, we've got the supermarket index, the grass-fed steer index, grain-fed steer, and EU. On this axis over here, we've just got the total change in the profitability of these animals, of the Hereford breed, effectively, since 1990 through to 2011. And so if we look at the supermarket index, what that's telling us, effectively, is since 1990, Hereford animals for use in the supermarket production system are $40 per cow mated more profitable than what they were in 1990. So we've made significant genetic improvement along those lines. This green bar here is against this axis over here, and it shows you what the rate of change is each year. So I think yesterday David Johnson put up some stuff saying we're making $2.40 per cow mated per year type of progress at the moment. This here would show that, well, pretty well very similar to that. And this is a 5-year rolling average, so it gives us a bit of an overall kind of period. The key thing I'd take out of that again is at the moment we're making $2.40, but we're now, as of today, making more progress, or a higher rate of progress than we ever have before. So the rate of improvement, we made $40 per cow mated on the supermarket index, and our rate of improvement at $2.40 or $2.20, or however we put it there, is greater than what it's been in the past. Similar thing if we see the other kind of graphs here, similar type of progress. So for the grass-fed steer, it's not quite $40, but it's in the high 30s. The grain-fed steer is up around the $40 again. And I suppose, given the talks that we had yesterday, importantly from an EU perspective, for the EU market, we've actually improved by about, going up towards $50 per cow mated per year, $50 per cow mated since 1990. So there's been significant genetic improvement within the Hereford breed. The other side of that, I suppose, is, well, how does that compare to what other breeds have done? And I'll put up now, we've recently done facilitated under the SBTS project, a genetic progress benchmarking workshop with our breed societies. And so we've got a whole lot of stuff here I'll be able to put up, which enables you to go through and see, well, how does that progress which you've made actually compare to what other breeds have made, and how your direct competitors are going in the same space. One thing I'll say is, I'm not sure if Carla's still here, but all of this stuff is looking at breed comparisons, so it is politically sensitive. So I'd ask that all of this is really for the benefit of us within the room at the moment, and don't really want to see much of it go outside of this room, but hopefully the messages will be useful to you. You're not here, that's it. Good. Safe. So this here gives you a benchmarking of the genetic progress since 1990 and also the last 5 years for the Hereford breed for each of the different indexes, and also how that compares to other breeds. So if we go here just to explain it, basically instead of in dollar units, because our indexes across our breeds are not directly comparable, we actually look in standard deviation units. So how many standard deviations have we changed our indexes? And so what this is saying is our $40, so for Hereford here we have the 4 different indexes, so the supermarket, grass-fed, grain-fed and EU, and then an average type of index over here. So it's telling us that $40 thereabouts is equivalent to moving our indexes by about 0.7 of a standard deviation. We have some benchmark data here to therefore say, well, compared to the entire Australian beef industry, how does that compare? All the breeds in southern Australia, basically stakeholders in our SBTS project, so all the southern breeds, the breeds which are members of our tropical beef industry, so in our TBTS project, our British breeds, our Euro breeds, our large breed societies, so I think that's breed societies recording more than 7,500 calves a year, our median, which is about 2,000 to 7,500 calves that they're registering each year, and our smaller breed societies which are recording less than 2,000 calves a year. Across here then we also have the 20 individual breeds. Now I haven't gone through and identified who those 20 breeds are other than just the Hereford breed, but we can start to see there has been significant variation across the different breeds in the amount of progress they've made. And I guess if I look at Hereford, you can say at the moment we are, in terms of our genetic progress since 1990, sitting at breed number 3. So out of 3 out of 20, you can say that that progress does compete against the majority of breeds. Of course, there is one big breed here that has made quite a lot of progress, and it doesn't take a huge amount of intuition to work out which breed that might be. When you start to compare against how the British, it's probably, by the impact of these, it's probably a British breed that's quite a large breed, and possibly quite a direct competitor of you. So you can go through and have a look at that, but the important message I suppose I want to take out of that is we've made, since 1990, 0.6, 0.7 of a standard deviation. In that same time, they've changed by 2 standard deviations. Now it doesn't necessarily say that that breed has got better genetics than what the Hereford animals do. All that's telling us in terms of change since 1990, they're either catching up in a hurry or they're going away in a hurry. Is how I look at it, depending on where they think we're relative to each other. In the last 5 years, you see that the message Herefords have increased their rate of genetic improvement in the last 5 years. And at the moment we're sitting at breed 2, but at 0.25 of a standard deviation versus 0.5, 0.48, etc. we're still making significantly less genetic progress than some of our competitors are. It's important, I suppose, to go through and actually... Sorry, Steve?
Andrew, as we can see, one breed's excelled, but in doing that, they've identified maybe a couple of bloodlines that have excelled for those indexes, and they're becoming saturated in a lot of pedigrees now. Do you believe that their performance will start to plateau off? Because there doesn't seem to be any other bloodlines out there that are competing with the too dominant?
Yeah, maintaining genetic diversity is the other part of that. There's no doubt about that. I haven't seen any stats to look at what the genetic diversity is in that breed versus the Hereford breed. All I've seen at the moment is the level of inbreeding within that breed, and it's not at a level at the moment where it'll be getting into a stage where people will be saying it was alarming. But obviously it is finding that there has been a slowing of progress in that breed, and it's about the fact where's the next bit of genetic improvement come from. And so you'll see that. But it's obviously, that is one part of the equation, and looking at maintaining genetic diversity long term. I don't think they're at a stage at the moment from my exposure to that breed where genetic diversity is going to be a limiting factor.
Andrew, can I make a comment on that point as well, if you don't mind, Sir Stephen, is that the comment made by David Johnson yesterday is we are not going to run out, and the breeds ourselves and our major competitors are not going to run out of genetic diversity. We'll all be long dead before we even scratch the surface on genetic diversity. Our competitor who we're talking about, which worries me about what you're saying, is that they are heavily involved in progeny test projects. So they are looking for the next wave of genetic diversity as we speak to actually fix any problem that might be coming here. I think they've created a bow wave big enough and a vanguard on this industry big enough that they're not potentially not going to fall in that hole. And to think that our saviour, I'm not suggesting you're saying this, Steve, but to think that our saviour is that they've got a minute pool of genetics which is shrinking and that's going to cause them problem, don't hold out hope that that is going to be our saviour. It will not be. Thinking about the adverse effects of our competitors is going to be our chance to get better is the wrong way to think about this equation. No, that's not what you're saying. We need to look after our own back paddock and what we are doing and increase the rate of our own genetic progress. Not rely on our competitors, but slow their rate of genetic progress. That's not the way this game will be won.
Thanks, John. I get the point I probably should have made, Steve, which is a better point, is if you looked at David Johnson's chicken slide yesterday, that after 41 generations, they were still getting a response to selection. And I imagine they would have had the same kind of issues that have been run into with the lack of diversity. So I don't think that's an issue, but maintaining that and managing our inbreeding is something which needs to be carefully considered.
Can I also make the point, if you want to go back and look at the early history of Hereford cattle, you would be absolutely totally alarmed at the amount of inbreeding that went on. Now, yet it's produced one of the greatest breeds you've got. So I'm not sure that this inbreeding issue is as big as people might like to think it is. I'm not saying it's not an issue, but it's your own breed came from a lot of inbreeding.
I'll take that as a comment and move on because rather than getting sucked down in inbreeding. So do you have a quick question or comment that you?
Do you think genetic diversity in the Hereford breed is caused that?
Lack of?
No, too much.
Too much? Do I have a thought on that? Probably not at the moment. I can't think of one at the moment. I won't enter in it. It's a good question though. And something for people to ponder, I guess. I'll move on now away from that kind of discussion point to where has that genetic improvement made to? So come back to Hereford, so getting away from our benchmarking data, looking back and saying, well, we've made $40 per cow mated of profitability. Where's that actual improvement come from on an individual trait level? So this just gives you, again, we put the traits in standard deviation of change. Since 1990, most of the change that you've seen has come from improvement in the growth traits. So we've improved our 2, 4 and 600 day weights by around 2 standard deviation. At the same time, we haven't seen a major loss in calving eggs. It has gone backwards slightly. Our mature cow weights have crept up a little bit. Our milk has gone up. Our fertility has improved. So our days to calving has got shorter in the favourable direction, but not by much. Our carcass traits, we haven't really changed too much. So at a genetic level, we might see bigger eye muscles, but what this would be telling us is those animals have got bigger eye muscles because they're bigger animals rather than more muscling. There has been some improvement, but no, it's fairly minimal on there. And coming out, we've got a big increase in carcass weight, a little bit of increase in yield, and our indexes, as we say, have increased by about that. So that's just giving an indication of where most of that change has come from. In the last 5 years, we have got a slightly different change to what we were seeing there. So we've improved growth by 0.4 of a standard deviation. but calving ease has actually improved in the last 5 years, between 2006 and 2011 I should say. And we've seen some change in the carcass traits. So a lot of this change that we saw here in the carcass traits has actually occurred, particularly for eye muscle, and well, eye muscle is probably the only one there in the last 5 years. We've started to put a bit more fat back into our cattle. There is a bit of marbling going in now, and our yield as a result is still going up, but not quite as much as what we saw up here, relatively. So that's kind of give you an idea where that change is coming from. I now want to delve in. I don't want to overload you with graphs, but I will. And actually look at some of these traits in a bit more detail. So if I look from a calving ease perspective, this graph shows you very similar to what we saw with the indexes. So this is the blue line here is the total change in that particular trait, and the green line here is the rate of change on a 5-year rolling average. So what we've seen over time in calving ease is over time since 1990 our calving ease came down and now it's come back. I should say, for the benefits of our New Zealanders, these are trans-Tasman trends, so they do take into account Australia and New Zealand. So we haven't split them at the moment. The index trends will just be Australia, but these are trans-Tasman. But our improvement in calving ease now is improving, not by a huge amount, but it is improving better now than it has been in the past. And birth weight, I suppose you can see that the change since 1990. Our animals genetically should be 2.5 kilos, or almost 3 kilos heavier at birth, based on just the genetic component. But the rate of improvement, we're down now. The rate of improvement, I said rate of change, we're down now where we're almost holding birth weight constant. The question probably becomes, well, how does that change in those individual traits benchmark against the other herds as well over the same period? And I'll put that up here just for calving ease in this case, because it's really the economically important trait that we're after. Again, exactly the same type of thing with the different groups of breeds, all the southern, all the northern, British Euro, large, medium, small, and the 20 different breeds. Now, a lot of our breeds don't produce calving ease EBVs, so only some of the breeds here have a trend. But as you can see, if we look here, compared to our other breeds, there have been a couple of breeds whose calving ease over that period has really come backwards in a hurry. Herefords have come back slightly, but it's quite competitive with what's happening across the board. In that one trait in isolation, in the last 5 years we see the same type of thing, but others probably in the last 5 years have put a bit more improvement or a bit more focus on that trait. If we look at the growth traits, so skipping into 2-4, 600 day weight, mature cow weight, similar type of thing we can see. So in terms of our growth at 200 days, our animals now are 18 kilos heavier at 200 days due to the growth genetics. At 400 days they should be about 30, and at 600 days we're up about 45 kilos heavier. In terms of our rate of progress, we're not actually putting, or our rate of progress in terms of sale weight has probably stayed pretty similar to what it was, if not come back slightly, than what it was in the early 90s, mid-90s, when we probably had more selection on growth, I imagine, compared to our other traits, our carcass traits and our birth traits and those type of things, relatively in those years. Mature cow weight over the same time has crept up by about 15 kilos. If I look at just 400 day weight as an indication of kind of sale weight or thereabouts, very correlated with 600 day weight obviously, this just shows you the benchmarking over that period. So again, Hereford breed, we've improved by 30 kilos. Over the same time, the southern industry, if you like, has gone at just above that at 35. And obviously the major breed that's made the progress has improved by a little bit more. So probably in terms of relativity, they've put 50% more growth in over that period. Now again, it's not saying that they have more growth or less growth, it's just their change over that period. They have made more change during that time. Similarly, in the last 5 years, again, we've made $6 kilos improvement versus 10. So there has been still that change is occurring today. There's more growth going into that breed. Mature cow weight at the same time, just to have a bit of a look at what's that done to cow size. Although at the same time our cow size has increased, but because of the extra growth which is going into other breeds and those type of things, then some of the other breeds have actually increased their mature cow size at a greater rate. Whether that's a good thing or a bad thing, I'll leave up to individuals to see what they're doing within their breeding program. Fertility wise, we'll just skip through some of these now, but So we have improved our scrotal circumference by about 1 square centimetre. It is still improving now, and is improving at a slightly greater rate than it has been. And our fertility, our days to calving, so our time between conception when the subsequent calf is born, has decreased a little bit, but not really much change over the last kind of 20 years. How does that compare to other breeds in terms of fertility? We can see there is quite a marked difference here between Herefords and what's happening in some of our competitive breeds. So we're not improving our fertility to the same degree as to what they are during that period. Carcass, moving on into some of these traits. So our EMAs, as I said in that first graph that we put up, we haven't seen much change in our carcass type of traits, respectively, but we're seeing some response now in eye muscle area, some response now in inch muscular fat. So we are improving inch muscular fat now more than we have been in the past, but the actual relative change at the moment is not huge on a per year basis. And our fats, we did take some out, and now we're putting some back in. Relatively, if I look at eye muscle area compared to other breeds, then the Herefords have, there are other breeds I suppose which have made more progress for eye muscle area over that period, and that's continuing to occur in the last 5 years. And the big one where we probably get a bit of difference is in inch muscular fat, and depending on how important you see that, then obviously there's one breed which has made a big progress in the last 21 years in that time, and that's continuing to occur in the last 5 year period. So there are some differences there when you start to look at benchmarking, and I'll go back, I suppose, how I would summarise all that genetic improvement. Hopefully it gives you a good insight into exactly what genetic improvement has occurred within the breed. But I think it's important to note that the Hereford breed has made good genetic improvement. So you have, your animals now are $40 per cow mated, more profitable than what they were in 1990 across the production systems which we're producing for. And that's a positive message. That was breed 2 or breed 3 across all the other breeds. So there has been progress made. The major improvement that we've seen has been in the growth traits. There has been some change observed in our other traits. We have had some improvement in milk and some in fertility. Had relatively small changes in calving ease and the carcass traits. But I guess the message out of from a breed, if you're looking at where we're going in the future, is other breeds have made more genetic improvement, and they are going faster than us at the moment. So, as I said, whether that means you think they're catching up in a hurry or whether they're getting away in a hurry, then either more there is a difference in how you're moving in your genetic improvement at the moment. So I guess the question comes down now to, well, what can we do as a breed, and also through our utilisation of Breedplan, I suppose, and with the genetic evaluation tools which are provided to you, to actually make more genetic progress moving forward. And I'll put up some of my thoughts. I've got 3 major thoughts here for you that will hopefully be your take-home messages out of this talk. But I think from a Hereford breed perspective, if we look at how much genetic progress are we making compared to what other breeds are making, better utilisation of Breedplan is the first thing we need to start to look at across the board. And what that means to me is we need to record more performance information across more animals and across more traits. So we effectively start to better describe the genetics of our Hereford animals so that we can make more informed selection decisions within our breeding programs. So to me that's the first thing that we need to seriously look at. To delve into that in a little bit more detail, we can look at what the level of performance recording is currently within the Hereford breed. So if I look at across the 2006 to 2010 drop calves, so calves born in those years, if we come down here, this gives you the percentage of animals which have been recorded with Herefords Australia, how many of them have been recorded for each of our different performance traits. So if we look, they've all got a full pedigree, generally, 99% of them have a full pedigree, so we're getting pedigree information in there. But if we start looking at our performance traits, there's only about 55% of animals which are recorded with Herefords Australia who actually have a 200-day weight recorded. To me, that's a very low level. Most of those animals should still be in the system at 200 days, and I can't see why, if we've got a very high membership of Breedplan, as David Johnson pointed out to us yesterday, so we've got over 90% of our members are members of Breedplan, why that number for a simple trait like 200-day weight isn't up at 80-90%. If we come across our other traits, our level of scanning, we've got 30% of animals which are scanned, so 30% of animals which are recorded with Herefords Australia actually have the carcass measurements taken. I guess the other way of looking at that is there's 70% of animals which are recorded which don't have carcass measurements taken, so we're not getting any information on those animals and not getting the benefit of describing those genetics. And for our birth traits, we're down in a better level than some of our weight and our scanning traits, but our birth traits are still down at this kind of 50% area. In our males and our females, there's not major differences other than we've got slightly more males being recorded than females. So looking forward, I'll put up some more benchmarking data for you to see, well, what's our level of recording in Hereford? How does that compare to other breeds? This is exactly the same type of information. So you can see for calving ease, just our recording our calving difficulties. So when a calf is born, whether it's being born unassisted or whether it's been pulled, simple trait to record with your registrations. The moment we have around 60% of animals that have a calving difficulty score recorded, and that is quite, compared to the other major breeds, a lot lower. Our birth weights, we're down at 45 to 50%, or 40% of calves I should say, which actually have a birth weight taken. And in terms of our AI date, just a simple what the date of AI was to feed into our gestation length EBVs, then we're down at around 60%. So there's big improvement for me in that what we can do compared to what our competitors are doing, and it's not just one competitor, it's across a range of other breeds in terms of our recording of our birth traits. At 200, 400 day weight, well I said we're down at 55%, and I think there's a big room for improvement. That does compete fairly well with other breeds. At 400 day weight, again, it's down, we're around the second highest breed in terms of our recording. But to me, at 40% of animals recorded, there's a big improvement in what we can do in our level of performance recording. Scanning wise, we're breed 3 or thereabouts, so we're recording around, the blue line gives us the males, all, then females and males. So we're recording about that 30% of animals. Some of our other breeds are recording 45%, that kind of thing. So recording probably, and those other breeds are recording twice as many calves per year, and then they're recording, scanning a greater proportion of them. So obviously they're improving, they're describing their carcass genetics better, they're making more informed selection decisions, and they're making more genetic improvement for those traits. So that's my number one message out of this talk, that if we're moving forward and we want to look at improving our genetics, and make more greater genetic improvement, we need to better utilise our breed plan and basically record more performance information on more animals or more traits. To help you and assist you with that, Herefords Australia have recently launched this Completeness of Performance program. So you now will have a Completeness of Performance basically report which provides to you for your herd how much performance information is in the system, so how much is recorded with breed plan. So you can all go through that, have a look at your individual production, your individual program, identify where are your missing bits of data compared to what you could be recording, and there's help available to assist you with going forward. And either you've got performance data on farm that you have collected that hasn't made its way in the breed plan, or there's other traits that you might want to look at recording, and you can certainly ring up and we can give you assistance with that. And associated with that, you'll now start to see all the star ratings which have come out. So that's compiled into, for each individual stud, providing you with an assessment on a 1 to 5 star system, how much or how complete is your performance information within the breed plan system. So that's something which has been launched by Breedplan, but in association with Herefords Australia, to try and move us forward and assist us with getting more performance information into the system. Second number tool here, the second message I suppose I would take in terms of how can we make more genetic improvement, and this one's not so much at your level, but I think it's more at a Breedplan level. Where we're going is to having better tools and more sophisticated tools available to you to use within your breeding program. And as I say, these in themselves won't actually make the genetic improvement, but they'll assist you with that. So obviously I don't need to touch on this in a lot of detail. We've had a lot of talks over the last couple of days about where DNA technology is going. It's obviously quite an emerging technology. I'm not, in my mind, still clear where it's going to end up and where we're going to get the most benefit from it. But obviously it gives us opportunities for more accurate pedigree, more easy management of genetic conditions, and we're certainly not immune to those. Possibly opportunities to manage qualitative traits like eye cancer. Obviously we've got tests out there for baldness at the moment, and potentially improved accuracy for our hard to measure traits. So I think we're moving down that track. and that's certainly one of the areas where we might be able to give you more improved systems that you can use to make more genetic improvement. One thing which is coming, which will probably happen within this year, is you'll start to see accuracy values on selection indexes. So for you, as per your accuracy values on your EBVs, the software is now being set up to actually go through and produce the accuracy values on the selection indexes to provide you with a more informed I guess, decision about how reliable the selection index is that's been calculated on individual animals. So you can wait and see that. Potentially we'll have additional EBVs which describe a greater proportion of overall commercial profitability. So there's a few ones there that are obvious omissions in my mind at the moment, and female longevity is one of them. That's something which is being looked at, whether we have additional EBVs. I know there are many people in the audience who say we don't need any more and more EBVs, but there are still some areas of commercial profitability which we don't have EBVs to describe genetics of our animals for, so I'm sure that's something which will probably develop in time. And there's also the availability moving forward of mating allocation type software. And I'm happy now to, I guess, launch, I don't know whether it's in the Hereford breed, but this is something which I haven't actually spoken to John about, and I haven't spoken to Breedplan about, but I'll launch it myself. There is, now that Herefords Australia have moved over to the new ILR2 software program that they run their breed society off, you now have available to you as of today a new optimised mating allocation tool called MateCell, which basically allows you to, in a nutshell, specify what the size are that you're happy to use, what the dams are, what the specifics of your breeding program is, so what your breeding objective is, which index you're focusing on, and some of the individual EBVs. And it will put it through the software and will provide you with a suggested mating list that should maximise the genetic improvement that you make by making those size to those dams. So it's a simple mating allocation tool, and it's only a suggested mating list it gives you. You don't obviously need to follow that to the nth degree. It's similar to the TGRM software that some of you might have been familiar with, but it will be available via Herefords Australia, via the Breedplan office for a cost of around $165. So that's available now. We haven't put any of the promotions or anything like that. John doesn't know about it, but it is there, and it will be available for anyone who wants to look at it as of today moving forward.
Andrew, when you pay your $165 and you get your matings, if it gets it wrong, can you get your money back?
Depends how you define getting it wrong. One of the things that we have put on a serious note is looked at how we can say, okay, let's look at what Jim Gunn did last year, and let's look at if we put the same thing into the MateCell analysis, and what difference in outcomes would we see in terms of the stuff which we can assess through Breedplan. So there are some things moving forward that we have available to us to give you an idea as to what benefits you would see.
That's on paper though, it's not included by.
Correct, that's right. So that's where I put up a suggested mating list. One of the issues I suppose that we have in the Hereford breed is for some of the phenotypic things that all the animals aren't black and aren't all polled, so there's all those other things which you take account of. So there's that part of it and the phenotypic, looking at how you max them up, that won't be taken account of. So to me it's a suggested mating list that you can then use to say, well, I don't think that mating would work, I might change that, but generally it'll give you a good overview. So that's number two, sorry. Number three, my last point up here, I think in terms of it, we're maximising our utilisation of genetic tools and our genetic improvement moving forward. Then I think we need to have a better focus or a better understanding on the actual factors which drive genetic improvement within our breeding program, and every time we're making decisions within our breeding program, thinking about how they impact on this. And I think David Johnson put this up yesterday, but I thought it was worthwhile putting it up again. It's a slightly different form that John put up, but this is when anyone that goes away and studies any genetics, then this is the formula which kind of gives it to you, that your response to selection or your genetic improvement which is going to be made is a function of your selection intensity, your accuracy of selection, the amount of genetic variation you have to work with, and your generation length. And I'll delve into each of those in a little bit more detail, just to say, well, what can you do within each of those functions or parts of the formula to actually improve the rate of genetic improvement that you're making. So the first thing is our selection intensity. So obviously the more or the higher selection intensity that we have available to us, the more genetic improvement that will make. What does that mean in real terms? In real terms, it's harder to increase that selection intensity in your females than your males. You do have options like embryo transfer and those type of things available to you. But ultimately, to me, where it's coming from is we need to use better bulls within our breeding programs. If we want to compete in terms of our genetic improvement, the bulls that we put into our breeding programs need to be better relative to our animals than what they are at the moment. And to me, that's of using the Breedplan technology to actually go through and identify what those bulls are through better recording, better description of those genetics, so that we can identify them more easily. And obviously the other part of this is the importance of then taking our better genetic bulls and using them more widely than we currently are. And there's a very wise man in the audience who pulled me up on this point yesterday and said, when you talk tomorrow, I want you to make sure, if you say nothing else, this is the one point that I want you to make. And I won't name him, but it's Bruce Gunning. And the one thing, it's a very real issue, if we look at what our competitiveness is compared to other breeds, at the moment we have just less than 20% of animals are bred by artificial breeding, whether that be AI or ET. Our major competitor, theirs is up around 45% of matings. So the big difference that they're doing is they're using a lot more genetic kind of reproductive technologies to get a greater spread of their better indexing animals or their better genetics animals across the breed, and I think that's one of the major drivers of their genetic improvement. So it's something to me which is we need to look at as a Hereford breed is how can we utilise more AI and how can we use that more widely. Is that the point right, Bruce? Thank you.
Spot on.
The next point here is our accuracy of selection. What can we do in this kind of area? Obviously, the higher the accuracy of our selection, the more accurately we're making our selection decisions to identify the better overall genetics or genetic profitability. How can we do it? There's nothing too mind-boggling about this. Consistent with what I've said before, I think we need to increase our level of performance recording so that we have more accurate EBVs available to us. That's both for existing traits and for potentially new traits. The utilisation of DNA technology also enables us hopefully to do that moving forward. And the other thing about it in terms of our accuracy of selection, we can do whatever we like up here in our level of performance recording and those type of things, but unless we actually use Breedplan as part of our selection decision, then it's no good to us having accurate EBVs. So we need to make sure we're still focusing on that and considering Breedplan a part of all our selection decisions in association with the other things that we might look at. Our genetic variation, I think David Johnson put up this again yesterday and said, well, there's not much you can really do about that. I think that's definitely true. The one thing that, or the two things that I think you can consider as part of this is, obviously it's all good and well to talk about genetic improvement, but we do need to continually monitor and restrict the inbreeding in my mind. Manage it is probably a better word than either of those. Just manage the inbreeding which is occurring within our production systems. How can you increase your genetic diversity? I guess the thing which we do have available to us is we're not just dealing with Australian genetics. As the boys down the front here will tell me, there's some good genetics over in New Zealand that's available, but also our Americans, our Canadians, etc. That are available to us, and there's a very big gene pool out there, and whether we can extract it and utilise information out of that is something which is available to us. Generation length, obviously the shorter generation length, then the more genetic improvement is possible. And I think for our message in that front is that we need to start to seriously consider trying to use younger animals within our breeding programs. So that's both more use of yearling size, and that's certainly occurring now, but also retaining a high percentage of our heifers and carving them down at 2 years of age if possible. So one of the major differences compared to our competitors, our heifers on average are coming into our breeding programs across the Hereford breed at 2.5 years of age. Your major competitors putting them in there at 2 years of age. So automatically they're making more genetic improvement simply because of the age that they're carving their heifers down and getting those animals into the breeding program sooner and making more progress that way. So that's a simple thing. If we can look at either our genetics or our management to get it from 2.5 down to 2. So that's my last slide here to finish up on, to go back across that whole talk and look at what I think the take-home messages are. First of all is this Breedplan is providing you with a tool to assist you in making genetic improvement within your program. Over time, there has been considerable genetic improvement made within the Hereford breed. I think it's important to still remind ourselves of that we have made, our animals now are $40 per cow mated more profitable than what they were in 1990. But there are always options, I suppose, to do things better and to take things quicker. and understanding the factors that influence the rate of genetic progress across those three key topics in terms of better utilisation of Breedplan, better tools available to use, and a greater understanding of actually what drives genetic progress within our operations will assist us in achieving that. And ultimately, I'll leave you with this thought, that ultimately where Breedplan and performance recording goes in 2013 and beyond won't be driven by anybody other than yourselves. So that the ball's really in your court about where you want to take it. There's the expertise available to guide you and take you wherever you want to go with it. We're very lucky that we have got some very astute scientists and things available to us at AGBU that develop these tools and those things, and they're available to assist us and take us with wherever we want to go with this. Last point I'll make as well is I just want to, while I've got this opportunity, just acknowledge the Herefords Australia, both from the Board of Directors, the Technical Committee, and also John and his staff. You've been a member of our SBTS project for the last 8 years now, and we really do appreciate the ongoing support that you provide to us. You put significant funding into this industry program, and it's much appreciated. We look forward to working forward in the past, and particularly to John, since he's been in the role. He's been very supportive and really utilising the services. So I just wanted to make that public vote of thanks. And thank you.